Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do a quick little video on a little tool belt pouch. You always have something that you need all the time. When I'm out at the cabin in the woods, I'm always needing a pair of pliers, a screwdriver, a knife. So I got a Leatherman, and I'm not sure, I picked this up somewhere at a show, but it didn't have a sheath or a pouch for it. But this is the exact tool I need to carry with me when I'm down at the cabin in the woods. So it's got pliers, it's got wire cutters, it's got screwdrivers, it's got a knife, it's got everything on it that I need, and look how small it is. It's great. But I don't want to carry that around in my pocket because it's built really well, so it's heavy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little quick pouch, put that on, or put it in on my belt, and then we're going to wet form it. So we're going to put it together real quickly, no stitching, and then I'll show you how I'm going to wet form that. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so what I did was I made me a little pattern with the Leatherman. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put rivets in this just so I can do it quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this or anything. This is not super high quality leather. This is probably 8 ounce, 6 to 8 ounce. You can see I just took it out of a piece of scrap that I had laying around. It's got some scars and some marks on it. Doesn't matter. It's not a showpiece or anything, but it's just a utility piece to use to hold this Leatherman. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose it while I was out in the woods. So I'm going to put a snap closure on it, and it would be specific to whatever you were making this for. That's why it's not going to be just a knockoff one pattern. These Leathermans even come in different sizes. So this is for this one specifically, but it'll work for whatever you want to use it for. I've cut those pattern pieces out. I've got the front, I've got the back with the snap closure flap, and then I cut me a belt loop at 3 inches. So all that came out of this piece of scrap that I've had left over from another project. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where I want to put my rivets. So I'm going to line the front and the back up, and I am going to punch through both pieces so they align perfectly with each other. I need to make sure that I at least make it look somewhat symmetrical. I don't want it looking like I just threw it together. So we're going to put a mark, and I'll grab my pen real quick. We're going to put a mark at 1/4 inch and about 1/8 of an inch in from the side on each side from the top here. So I've got a mark here and a mark here where I'm going to put one. And then I think more than enough if we go 1.5 inches and put a mark and come down 1.5 inches again toward the bottom. Do the same thing on the other side. Come down 1.5 inches. Move down to 1.5 inches from that mark, and I'm staying about 1/8 to 3/16 away from the edge as I do this. And then right at the very bottom, at the tip for here, I'm going to go ahead and put one more. So that's going to be closer than any of the rest of these, but that's going to reinforce that tip. So as you're pushing that Leatherman back down into that pouch, it's not going to wear and try to stretch that leather and slide through there. So let's go ahead, let's match those up, front and back, and let's go ahead and punch that. And I'm going to punch it through both pieces. At least that's my attempt. If not, I can always, looks like it's working great. So you could always go ahead, you're going to put a mark on the back side anyway while you're doing this. You could always go through the back piece by itself if you needed to. Do the one at the bottom. And then I'm going to turn this around and make sure that I'm still aligned with the other side. And this is a 1/8 inch punch. That's what I use on my rivets. Works great. So those spoils, I'll just throw them in a container and get them out of my way. So I've got my holes punched where I need them. Now, what I want to do, before I start putting these rivets in, I want to put this strap on so that I don't have to worry about trying to get inside there. I want to put it on first. So I want it to fit between the flap, the closure, and these rivets on the bottom here. So you could measure it if you'd like. I'm just going to eyeball it. Use the same punch. Go through both thicknesses again. And I'm using a poly cutting board as my backer. Now that's ready to go ahead and put my rivets in. And that'll be for my belt loop. So let's go ahead and take our hardware. And since I'm doing two thicknesses, I'll use my 3/16 shorter rivets and grab a setter. Put my rivet through the inside. my rivet on my anvil. I've got my belt loop strap through the rivet, and then I put my cap on. And then set that rivet. I am putting all this hardware on and completing this before I do any wet forming. I want to see how this turns out. It's not going to hurt it. These rivets won't rust, so I'm not worried about getting moisture on them or anything. So there's my belt loop. It's on there nice, tight. Those rivets are not going to hurt this Leatherman. It's built so much tougher than those rivets. Not concerned about that. Now what I can do is go ahead and start putting these rivets in around the actual pouch on the outside. There's my first one, and you can see by putting it about 3/16 to an 1/8 in from the edge, from this edge here, it leaves just a little bit of leather exposed, which worked great. I'll go ahead and do the second one. Get me some more hardware here. And then I'll just continue around that pouch on the outside. And again, I marked those holes so it would stay symmetrical and look good instead of just eyeballing those. So I measured those. And I have a lot of rivets, but I keep pulling out rivets, but no caps. So there we go. I got a few caps here. Now I'll do the last one. Then what we'll do is, there's all the rivets. Again, I reinforced the nose down here. There's my dry fit. Now what I need to do is put my snap in. I can put these rivets away. I'm done with those. So let me grab a snap setter. I'm going to use a silver snap to match the silver rivets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scribe here and I'm going to fold that over where I have a nice snug fit on that flap, and I'm going to place a mark right in the center. I'll take my 1/8 inch punch. I'll put a hole in the flap. Now I'll fold the flap over and I'll put a mark on the other piece. Take the Leatherman out. I'll take another piece of polyboard I have that I can slide the handle up in, and I can get a nice hole to line up for my snap. And there's the hole for that. There's where they line up. So I can go ahead and push the back part of my snap in there. Let me see if I can find my other pieces I need here. I found them, but they're stuck together. There we go. So there's the piece that I need. That's the male. So I will slide this anvil, flip it over so it's flat, slide that in there, take my setter, and I rotate that so that I get nice round set or bead on the snap. I don't want to hit straight down on it, or it may shove it over to one side or the other, and then it won't be as strong. So then I can take the other closure and there's the female end. And I'll flip my anvil over so I've got the rounded edge on there. Take my setter, and I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to check it, see if it's tight, see if it's flattening out correctly. Before I go ahead and finish that off. So I've got a nice tight seal on that part, and then I'll test it where I'll snap it together and then open it up. Make sure everything's nice and tight and snug. We don't have any problems with it. Then I'll dry fit the Leatherman again. Push it all the way down to the bottom. And there it is. I've got my belt strap. And look how small that is. Very compact. I'll put these pieces back up and my setters, get them out of the way. Close up my hardware. Now I'm ready to do my wet forming. Alright, so what I've got is some cling wrap here, and I just take a piece big enough to cover the item that I'm going to put into wet form. whether it's a pistol or a revolver, a knife, whatever it is. So I'm going to take the Leatherman. I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to wrap that up in that cling wrap. That will keep it from getting moisture to it. So I just squeeze that down, and it'll squeeze right down to the shape. I'll put it back in the pouch, and this closure is loose. That's why it's not wanting to snap in there. Let me tighten that back down a little bit. Now it's nice and tight. I thought I checked that, but now it snaps in there nice and tight. So I've got my Leatherman wrapped in saran wrap or cling wrap, so it's not going to get moisture to it. And I've got a pan here, or a pail of warm water. I'm just going to drop that in there. It's not hot, it's just warm. And you can see it, as soon as I start putting it in there, it starts changing color. It starts getting darker. You can see the different colors. So as that sits there for a few minutes, I'm going to grab a few paper towels here, and I want to make sure that it's totally immersed and moist. Then I can pull that out and let all the excess moisture drip off. Then I can move that water out of the way, and my leather's ready to do some wet forming. Now, there's several ways you could do this. I like to take a Sharpie marker, and it has a nice smooth end, the cap and the bottom. I like to use the bottom, and then I just start pushing around and you can roll it as you push. Just roll the marker and what that's doing is that's forming that leather around that tool, whether it's a pistol or whatever it is, a Leatherman, a screwdriver, it doesn't matter what it is. So it starts pushing that leather. You can see this is pre-dyed leather, and some of the dye from the warm water is going on to my paper towel. So you can see as I push that and roll it, it's taking shape. And you can use your fingers too. Doesn't have to be just a tool, or in this case a marker, but I can squeeze that together all the way around there. And you may get a little push out here on one side or the other. Don't worry about that. We can trim that up later after it dries. And make that nice and neat. Then in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some of these flat plastic clamps. They don't have a ton of pressure, but they have enough. So I'll put those right up against the Leatherman on both sides, and that'll flatten all this out. And as that dries, that's what's going to form that shape. And again, these clamps are plastic. They don't have a ton of pressure on them. But they will have enough pressure to hold the shape. And that's all you need. It's just something to hold the shape as that dries. So we'll let that set and dry for at least an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then we'll come back and we'll check out what that's going to end up being like for the final product. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so it's been about an hour. I'll take these plastic clamps off, and you can see that I've got a nice wet formed defined edge around that. Then I take the item that I'm wet forming, in this case this Leatherman, I'll take it out, set it aside, and then I'll let this sit overnight, and then it'll be nice and formed. It'll harden up a little bit. Let's see if I can take this Leatherman out of the saran wrap, and you can see it'll drop right down in that formed area. So as soon as that dries overnight, I'm ready to trim it up or do whatever I want to. I could leave it just like that, but you could trim these edges up, whatever you want to do, but it's ready to go. As soon as I let that dry overnight, I can go ahead and start using that. So that's a quick little way to do a little pouch and do some wet forming. All right, I appreciate you coming along, checking out this video, and got a nice wet formed pouch for my Leatherman, and I'll be able to secure that on my belt and take that out in the woods with me and not worry about losing it. So I'll always have a pair of pliers, a knife, screwdrivers, whatever I need while I'm out there, and it'll be secured. So I appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you watching. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. It's free. And as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.